Hello and welcome to our flipped learning for Piaget's theories of cognitive development. Now this is the first theory that we're going to look at in terms of how we develop as our children, and it's a really famous and influential study, and you need to be able to state what the stages are and what children can do at particular stages according to Piaget's research. So we'll start with a quote from Piaget then. It is with children that we have the best chance of studying the development of logical knowledge, mathematical knowledge, physical knowledge, and so forth. Now you'll notice from the date that this is quite a while ago, but what Piaget was very influential in putting forward was this idea that if we study children and how they develop, then we have a really good understanding of what good development is, and then how we can go on to support people who don't develop in the same way. It also started to gather momentum in terms of animal studies, and are there similarities between the way that animals develop. So Piaget then, very influential, has been around for a long time, was around the birth of psychology, around the turn of the century. He started working on IQ development with Alfred Binet, which we're going to talk about in a few weeks' time. And what he discovered was that there were some interesting ways in which children learned that could be applied to all children. And that's where he started his theories of cognitive development. So Piaget's theory then, it's based around intelligence, but when we talk about intelligence, we're talking about gaining knowledge and gaining skills. It's not just general intelligence, which we might measure with an IQ test. It can be more about problem solving and understanding the situation or the environment that you're in. Now Piaget saw this as a process, so a set of skills that we develop in a particular way, or a set of stages that we go through. It doesn't stay the same, we're constantly developing. Even as adults we gain more intelligence and more skills, and it helps us to survive in our environment. We adapt and we use the skills that we've learned, or we lose the ones that we don't need anymore. So there's some key things we need to know about Piaget's theory. First of all, it's invariant. So the children pass through the stages at the same order. So we all learn everything in the same order, the same way. The stages are the same for all children. So how one child learns to read, another child will go through the same stage as well. Piaget described children as little scientists. They're constantly trying to understand and make sense of the environment around them, and this helps them gain knowledge and this helps them move on. Piaget felt that children have mental schemas, and he developed this word called schemas. Now, a schema is a shortcut or a stereotype that we would use to help us make sense of a new situation. Now, as we develop and as we grow, those schemas become updated. They don't stay the same. So a schema we might have as a young child, say for example for a birthday party, might be very different to the schema we have as an 18-year-old of what a birthday party would be. And we need to use the knowledge we gain along the way to update those schemas. Now if we add information into those schemas that we already have, that's called assimilation. If we need to update the schema or build a new schema because of new information that we've come across, that's called accommodation. Now there are quite a few key terms in this theory that you need to try and get your head around. So you need to be making sure that you are keeping up to date with your key term glossary or your flashcards as you go along. So these are the 4 stages that Piaget put forward. These are the 4 stages that he said we all go through in all the same order. We've got the sensorimotor stage, stage 1, the preoperational stage at stage 2, stage 3 is concrete operational, and stage 4 is formal operational. Now you'll see that we've got some ages on these, and they are broadly the ages that we go through these stages. They do change slightly depending on each person's abilities, but they are broadly around the same time. So the sensorimotor stage then, this is from 0 up to about the age of 2. This is a very sort of quick time in the amount that we learn. We learn an awful lot in this stage. The biggest issue that we have to deal with when we are 0 to 2 years old is the idea of object permanence. Now, it's very difficult to try and understand this as someone who's a little bit older now, but as a baby you would have believed that if you couldn't see an object anymore, it had disappeared. And that's why games like peekaboo or hiding things from babies are so challenging for them, and how they like to play those, even though you know that you're still there hiding behind your hands. They think you've disappeared, and that's why the game is so entertaining. At the pre-operational stage, which is 2 years up to about 7 years, we see some changes in what we think of as logic. Okay, so around this stage, young children believe that inanimate objects are alive. So in terms of when they're playing and they've got their toys out, and they've got teddy bears and dolls and things like that, and they're talking, they believe that they are alive, and when they're speaking for the toy. Around this stage, children are very egocentric. They have a lack of empathy, not because they are not very nice people, just because they haven't learned about empathy. They haven't learned that you have a different viewpoint to they have different viewpoints. They think that everything they see and everything they know, everyone else does as well. So they don't have the ability to think in someone else's shoes. They also at this age don't have the idea of reversibility. Now this idea of reversibility is, for example, if you have a ball of plasticine, if you squash it flat, they don't understand that you can remake that into a ball. They think that has been destroyed forever. Concrete operational stage is around the age of 7 up to 11, and the biggest change at this stage is the idea of conservation. Now, an example of conservation is the idea that you can change the shape of an object, but it doesn't change in mass or volume. So, for example, if you take a bottle of drink and you pour it into quite a wide glass, the idea of conservation is that you still understand it's the same volume of drink, the same amount of drink, even though it looks like a different shape in that different glass. So before this age, what you will find is that if you are offering different glasses to children, they will pick the one they think has got the most in, so they might pick the tallest because it looks like it's got the most drink. Around this age, they also get better at decentration. So this is the idea that they can hold 2 or 3 different ideas in their head all at the same time. A really good example of this is when they learn to read. So instead of just focusing on individual letters, they're able to start stringing those letters together to make words, and words together to make sentences, and that makes the story as a whole. So it's not until this age we can start to do this. Now, this might have implications for what age we send our children to school and what age we expect them to start to read and write. We can also get good at seriation at this stage, where we can start putting things in rank order, and also linguistic humour. So until this age, children are not very good at telling jokes because they don't understand the way that the language works. So if we're using puns, or if we're using alternative meanings for jokes, things like knock-knock jokes, where a word can have 2 meanings, up until this stage, they don't understand them. The 4th stage is from 11 plus onwards. This is called the formal operational stage, and this is where children start to think logically, and they start to think abstractly, so they can think about hypothetical situations. What if this happened? How would you feel if that happened to you? What does this person think about this situation? And they're quite in-depth, difficult situations to think about, because they have to not only think about empathy, but think about other people's viewpoints. Okay. Now, the big thing about this one is that some people take a lot longer to reach this. In some cases, about 18. In some cases, depending on developmental ability, not at all. Okay. Right. So we need to get our head around those, and we need to find a way of remembering. There are lots of different ways you can remember, and this is just not one of the ideas from the book. So you can think of see pretty cows fly, and that should hopefully twig those first words in the stages. So we have sensorimotor, preoperational, concrete operational, and formal operational. So you'll need to get your head around those, before we can start evaluating the theory.